Can you hear me now?
Hello.
Hi.
Good afternoon.
Great. Just testing. All right, great. How's everything going?
Okay, fine. Can you hear me properly?
I can hear you just fine.
Okay. Would you like to do a video?
I'm just gonna record a Google Hangout right now and just do it for like 30, 40 minutes and just catch up. Because there's some things too I find interesting as well. And if you want to tell me anything, I don't know.
Okay. I mean, in terms of your computer system and everything, it's okay.
No, it's totally fine. What I'm doing is I'm actually recording the Skype through the Google Hangout, so it's just fine. So
okay, fine.
good.
But I mean, you're the technical guy. I don't know much about these technical things.
Yeah, all you guys just have to do is talk. So I'm just gonna record now, okay?
Okay, fine.
Kashif, how's been everything?
Things have been very interesting since we spoke last. How have you been?
I'm okay. Just been school, relationships, and on and off the YouTube game, but some other weird things have happened. I don't know if you've been following Claire recently. She was trying to get on Millennial Woes, but didn't allow her to get on Woes is because she advocates secular Quranism. I don't know if you've been following this or not, but she had a YouTube reply that a day ago.
Yes, she and we have spoken at great length regarding this, as well as many other issues, and she has some interesting ideas.
Would you agree that secular Quranism is something you would advocate as well?
Well, it is an oxymoron of sorts, because if somebody believes in the Quran, then he isn't or she isn't secular. They believe in God. So, you can't say that I want to implement Quranic laws when those very laws say that you should believe in God. So I have told her time and again that, this is an oxymoron, that you want to have a society where you want to implement Quranic laws, because a lot of those laws exhort a person to believe in God. And you can't say that I'll pick and choose things,
But she's saying that the Islam is like the dominant patriarchy and should have control of the world, correct?
Well, no. Actually, Islam is not supremacist. It's a recent phenomena that this notion of Islamic supremacy has come forward. Islam calls for peaceful coexistence between all the religions. It's not that it wants to annihilate or eliminate all other viewpoints. There is bound to be a difference of opinion. Because God has given every human being a free choice. He can freely choose to believe anything he wishes. And that is a choice that they have been given by God. So, I've told Claire, I've spoken to her, argued with her regarding this. It's very interesting what her beliefs are.
Well, what do you think? Why you think it's possible that the alt-right is just somehow going to be interested in Islam and they're going to start converting the Muslims anytime soon?
Like, I can't say much about the alt-right because I haven't studied the alt-right as such. But there are, Islamic values are natural to every human being. They aren't distinctly related to any one culture. For example, one may assume that Islam is about Arab culture, or that the Prophet of Islam was an Arab, therefore Arabs are given some sort of a privilege. But when we read the Quran, we see that isn't the case. The Quranic teachings are generic in nature, and they aren't, prescribed for one culture or one racial group as such. So you may be a white person, you may be a black person or a Chinese person. What we need to see is, the values that are being given, and whether those values are something conducive to you, to your condition generally.
So do you advocate that Claire should associate with the alt-right, or should she distance herself from the alt-right simply because she's not allowed to be on Millennial Woes?
I don't know much about, these things, about what is alt-right, and these terms they are sort of in your narrative in the United States. But in this part of the world, I'm in Asia. So being an Asian, these things, these arguments are not that commonplace in our society. So I can't, suggest what one should do or shouldn't do without having knowledge. To be honest, I don't know what the alt-right is. So I can't advocate it, or I can't prevent somebody or tell somebody not to go out and about it. So for me to do that, first of all, I need to learn what is all the things about.
Well, what have you been doing in the past few months with your project and your works?
Well, I've been writing articles. I write for a newspaper. I write a column for one of Pakistan's largest newspapers, and I've been writing those articles. And mind you, this work is after work, something I voluntarily do. It's not a part of my paid vocation or job as such. I have a different day job, and whatever time I get, I devote it to studies and learning. So at the moment, I'm looking at making some YouTube videos specifically at Judaism, Christianity, and their relationship with Islam. So I'm working on developing some new videos around those themes.
Yeah, you should definitely get into YouTube because everybody's on it, and I'm using Google Hangouts right now. So it's almost necessary to learn YouTube and start making content. And that's something I've been learning the past year. Just talking about your videos, you said something about Jewish and Christian relationship. I mean, maybe to point this out again, if nobody, what's your stance again on Judaism, particularly?
Judaism is a religion that claims to follow God's prophets and God's messengers. Like, Jews would say, we believe in Abraham. They believe in the patriarchs. They believe in the sons of Abraham, like Isaac, like Joseph, and so on and so forth, till Moses. And they would say, that we are the religion of the prophets of God. Now, as far as that is concerned, they are in agreement with the Muslims. Muslims also believe in Abraham. Abraham occupies a very prominent place in the Islamic texts, the Quran, as well as all the other prophets. Where we disagree with them is with regards to the prophecy of Jesus. Muslims believe that Jesus was a true prophet. He was the Messiah. He was a true messenger of God. But Jews do not believe that. Jews reject Jesus Christ. So this is where we have a disagreement. But we also have a disagreement with the Christians, because the Christians, they elevate Jesus to a divine status. They make him a god. They make him a god in human flesh. So that is also not acceptable to Muslims, because Muslims say that he was a spokesperson of God, he was a prophet of God, but he wasn't God reincarnate. So we have some similarities with the Jews as well as the Christians, but we also have points of difference. And until or unless, we talk to each other, we speak to each other, there isn't a way to know about these similarities and differences, and there isn't a way to reconcile them. So I think dialogue and discussion is really, really important.
And as for Christianity, you said you were going to make a video between Judaism and Christianity. What in particular about Judaism and Christianity were you going to plan or talk about the subjects of them?
Well, what I had in mind was, I would take selected themes from, themes which are common to all the three faiths. For example, the concept of God. How is God understood in the Hebrew scriptures, which is sacred to the Jews, and compare it with the concept of God in the Islamic scripture, the Quran. Similarly, we will speak, we will look into prophecy, what is prophecy within the Jewish scriptures, and prophecy or prophethood in the Quran. Notions like salvation, what does it mean to have salvation in Judaism and in Islam? And we will also extend all of these, themes to Christianity as such. What is salvation in Christianity? How does a person find salvation? And what is its correlation within the Islamic texts? I think, these are the core themes that one needs to look into. It would be more of a series of lectures on comparative religion. I'm working on a series of lectures, short talks on comparative religion, on Judaism, Christianity, and Islam.
I'm curious, did Claire Call meet you, or did you meet her?
I think she met me. It was not met physically, as in online. I think it was about 7 or 8 years back that she wrote something on a blog, and I commented on it. I don't remember. But then we sort of discussed things, but then I lost contact with her. And it is only after 8 years that she actively, chatted with me. And it's been quite a long time, 8 years or so, since we resumed our contact. So I'm sure, you are aware that she's very active. She proactively engages in conversations and things like that.
Well, it seems that has been engaging in talks of Islam, but in a perverted way you strongly disagree with. Is there any bouts or disagreements you've had previously when you were talking with Claw?
I wouldn't rule out each and everything that she says is incorrect. I wouldn't rule out, I wouldn't dismiss everything. There are some things which are correct, but there are some things which aren't. I mean, she comes from a political background of nationalism, and she's been mingling with supremacists and the far right and things like that. So those kind of things are, something which are quite uncomfortable. And as far as Islam is concerned, first of all, we need to understand that Islam is here to make you into a better human being, right? God has given us a set of rules, first and foremost, so that we become better human beings. We improve ourselves in character and in conduct. The rest comes afterwards, changing and reforming society and making, everything all right and things like that. These are interesting things. These are romantic ideas which people pursue. But the principal aim of religion is your self-improvement. You have to improve yourself and you have to become a better person. And you do that, first of all, by educating yourself. You educate yourself with the correct theology, with the rights and the wrongs, and you start practicing those, implementing those in your personal life. So this is something, which when people speak about religion, they often ignore this. They look at religion as a way to make the world all right. Perhaps, the whole world would be all right. But what about yourself? What about you as a person?
Well, that's pretty much a long story in itself. Religiously, I would say I was raised Catholic or Pentecostal. But again, I've pretty much shifted from religion and went to more of a agnostic position, meaning that people say today that they are spiritual but not religious. However, I'm very open-minded about religion, as I do believe in some sense of the supernatural. But I feel that there are many different views of the supernatural, and maybe something extraterrestrial or alien is actually out there, you know?
Yeah. Uh, Religion is as old as man himself. And since ever human beings have existed, they have got this notion of something greater, something far above the heavens and the earth. They have had that belief. We believe as Muslims that God exists, but the human mind cannot comprehend God. God you can't define God. You cannot sort of make his images. You cannot make his likeness. You can't make his statues, because the moment you do that, you reduce God to a very minute being, to a creation. So anything that is created, that cannot be conceptualized as God. You can't have statues of God. You can't have pictures of God. Old man sitting in the sky, like some of the paintings that you see in the West. Muslims don't adhere to that. The only way to know about God is through his words, through his scripture, and the words that are given there, they are the definitive attributes of God. So that is how we see things. And while there is the true concept of God, there is also the false concept of God. There are people who believe wrong things about God, who make human beings into gods, for example, and they attribute divine status to human beings. They start worshipping human beings. Some even start worshipping animals and cows and monkeys and whatnot. So Islam disagrees fundamentally with that sort of a methodology by saying that the creation is not the creator. There is a difference between the creation and the creator.
For example, for a long time, the alt-right has worshipped Richard Spencer, and people still believe that Richard Spencer will lead the alt-right to greatness. But accordingly, I think you would agree that Richard Spencer is a false prophet.
Is Richard Spencer the guy who makes those videos about Islam?
No, I don't think you've said anything much about Islam. Richard Spencer's has a big figure in America, being the forefront of the alt-right since he coined the term. And a lot of the action of the alt-right is kind of, I don't want to say dictatorship, but there definitely is a celebrity status around one individual.
Okay. Well, again, you see, human beings are not infallible. The moment you confer infallibility to any human being, you are making him into a god. This is something we need to understand, that when we say, I will blindly follow so-and-so person, so-and-so, charismatic speaker or whatnot, I will do it blindly. I will not hold him accountable for anything. You are making him into a god, whether you use that term or not. This is how cults start. This is how basically people end up blindly following things. And this is a very dangerous thing to do. So whether it is Richard Spencer or anybody, Tom, Dick, and Harry for that matter, we have got to understand that they are human beings. And at the end of the day, they are susceptible to mistakes. And one should not blindly adhere to any such prophet or such messenger in that sense. And we need to understand their frailty as such and not consider them to be, beyond critique.
There's an irony that when you make content on YouTube, you'll definitely get subscribers and people start to follow you and will create basically a cult worship around you. And if smart enough, you can eventually make money on YouTube and consider it your profession. Already, there are YouTube celebrities that have millions of subscribers, or just even 100 to 300,000 subscribers, which is pretty much the norm in the alt-right. And 5,000, 10,000 would pretty much be around my range. And that does create ego in itself. So when you should consider this, that if you were to, you go on the YouTube platform, obviously you have to attract people with your message. But then in return, it will create some kind of merchant figure or some kind of idol in itself. So it seems to me that it's almost inescapable that if you go on YouTube and put out your message, obviously you're creating yourself as of a god to other people.
Yeah, this is more likely, a cult phenomena. We should understand what are cults. Cults are groups that are formed by charismatic speakers. And a cult does not necessarily mean a religious cult only. Cults can be political cults, they can be economic cults, they can be corporate cults, they can be, religious cults, whatsoever. And cults are formed when charismatic speakers, they start a small following. And then they attain a godlike status, they become some sort of a brand and they are worshipped by people. That sort of a worship is really harmful and detrimental to society. Because then you forego your reasoning abilities. You start to regurgitate messages, you start to propagate messages without being rational, and there are consequences of that. The internet is a medium. If you notice the internet, it is a medium which has now overtaken normal TV. People don't spend time on television. They don't watch TV that much. In my home, even my mom included. My mom is on her mobile phone, all the time. She's looking up cooking recipes and things like that. Since the internet and mobile phones, smartphones, it has given, access to these individuals to reach out into the common person. They have set up shop over there. They have seen an opportunity. Previously, when there was no internet, these preachers, the new preachers that you have, they would require a lot of budgets. They would need a lot of traveling and whatnot to gather an audience. But now what everyone needs to do is just set up a YouTube channel. And if he is if he is pressing the right buttons, if he is using the right language, there you go. You have got hundreds of thousands of followers with a click. And this can be pretty scary. It can be pretty scary because these preachers, my question is, are they regulated? Does somebody regulate them?
Well, for recently, actually, YouTube has been trying to strike people for hate speech or speech that's Republican or right-wing. And for 3 to 6 months, you can't make money or can't live stream. And so what people have been doing is making alt accounts or trying to use a different platform. And I think it's interesting to note that as we have these God-like status on YouTube, certainly there's also a democratic or popular opinion, such as being anti-SJW or being anti-liberal. And this is something the YouTube corporation and the power structure of America does not like. And so in return, as people are being these selfish icon or idols, they're also agreeing with the same anti-SJW message because, again, that's what sells, oddly enough.
Yeah, you see, the outreach of YouTube is as such that you are in a person's head all the time. It's an addictive medium. and that is something very lucrative for those who have a commercial interest. If your message, if your product can be, into somebody's mind. First, if you capture somebody's mind, it's easy to reach for his pocket. So these people, they are opportunists. They see an opportunity, and then they exploit that opportunity. When you become a famous speaker on YouTube, for example, you have fans and you have followers. That gives you a lot of power. That gives you a lot of power. It also translates into wealth. It can also, translate into having money, and there are all sorts of repercussions of this. Becoming a YouTube preacher. There are sometimes such preachers are set up by governments themselves. Governments, when they have an agenda, they want to set up a preacher to further a particular political cause, or to counter a certain religious group, or a social movement. They would prop up such preachers by themselves. You might not know, but they are outfits, like that. And governments do that all the time. When documents are declassified after 50 years or 60 years or so, people then come to learn that so-and-so group, so-and-so cult was actually on the government payroll, and it was cropped up for a purpose. But the common person obviously, fails to realize that.
Well, what big governments are you talking about that uses the internet to get across messages?
I would say every government would do this. I would say that governments all across are now using the internet to further their agenda. Whether they be in Asia or whether they be in Western Europe, the internet is a medium that has a potential, and the people in government would be very naive, not to do so, because the internet has a very vast outreach, and it is a medium which can influence people at a massive scale. So if a government is not on it, and if it isn't doing, what should be done to further its agenda, it would look really bad on a government or a government agency. So they do it all the time. You've got news coming in of the Russians trying to influence the US elections. When we have elections over here, like for example in Pakistan, we've recently had elections and we've got a new prime minister, a new government. There were social media campaigns being run by political parties. And one campaign would malign the candidates and political leaders of the other. Suddenly fake accounts would crop up. And there's a lot of fake accounts that go up, and there's, you can recognize them because they are regurgitating the same thing over and over again. They aren't, when people talk normally, like you and I, we are talking, the conversation is normal, okay? But when the conversation is one-sided and there is only, one narrative, you see it, you see past it, that this is a fake account, and it is just a piece of advertising that is being there. So sadly, a lot of such Facebook pages, Twitter accounts, they are cropping up. And people from all sorts of political leanings are using such to further their aims. So I would be very, very careful in following a religious preacher or a political pundit who has set up a Facebook account or a YouTube page, and I wouldn't make him my guru just like that, because there are a lot of phonies out there, and there are a lot of people with a particular agenda who are out there, who want to manipulate you, who are out there to catch fish. Basically, they've put in the bait, and if you are, hooked, then they are catching fish.
Well, actually, in America, it's really popular among the normative, liberal, and boomer older generation that supposedly the Russian government, quote unquote, hacked the United States election by creating fake accounts online and voting in Trump. This falls short that half America obviously voted for Donald Trump, but still some believe, especially liberals, believe that it was an unfair game or somebody cheated in the game to get Donald Trump in. Would you say, or do you think that there are actually elites putting in Donald Trump's position, or was this actually something authentic with the people who voted him in?
Uh, obviously, I don't have the facts before me to form a judgment and opinion to say, either or. But what I can tell you is that if a government is able to do that, then it would do it. It would do it. There is a saying, all is fair in love and war. So governments do these sorts of things. I don't know if you know history. The Russians have a very long history of espionage and infiltrations. There was a book that was written in the 1980s by a former MI5 agent by the name of Peter Wright. I think it was Peter Wright, Spy Catcher. That book, Spy Catcher, was banned by the Thatcher government. And in that book, the author, he alleged that the head of MI5 was a Russian agent himself, and the Russians had infiltrated Oxford University from ages and ages, and so intelligence agencies, they do that sort of a thing. It would be very naive to say that they don't do that sort of thing. Agencies, they go and they make political groups within a country. They do all sorts of things. It's very commonplace. I was talking about cults. I'm sure you know that there's a cult called the Moonies. Have you heard of the Moonies?
Oh yeah, the Moonies are the Korean Moonies are located actually around my neighborhood, about 40 minutes off. Yeah.
Right. Okay, the Moonies were funded by the CIA in the 50s against the North. Their main aim was to, target the North Koreans and to further capitalism. It was a cult that was started by, such political objectives. And there's a very good book I'd like you to read if you are able to read it. It's called The Cult of Mind Control.
All right.
The Cult of Mind Control. It's written by an American author who is a former Moonie himself. The author's name is Stephen Hassan. Stephen Hassan, Hassan. And the title is The Cult of Mind Control. And he talks about all sorts of, cult techniques, and he's an expert on cults. So the internet is the new breeding ground of cults. Let me tell you that. I know in Pakistan, there are new and new prophets who are coming up. There are new claimants to messengerhood who are coming up. And the young people, they're targeting the young people, and there are new ideologies coming up. So the internet is pretty scary space, and I would be really cautious in choosing such, YouTube channels and things like that, and getting addicted to it.
Would you particularly say, is there something dangerous or something in opposition on YouTube or in the internet sphere right now that you particularly don't like that has a negative influence?
I haven't done, research on this that much to pinpoint exactly things, which are harmful. But as in a generic way, as a generic rule, I would say that one should be cautious, especially when people want to establish contact with you. They want you to meet you personally. They want to meet you offline. This can be dangerous. Okay, the way it works is, let me tell you how. First, there is a speech. First, there is a lecture which is given online, right? Then after the lecture, people surround you. People get in touch with you, they chat with you, they exchange emails, and the next step is for you to physically meet them. Okay, now that is the dangerous part. To meet somebody anonymous or to meet somebody that you have met online, it's really, really dangerous. I would, I think that there needs to be parental control, especially for youngsters, and this is how criminals can, take advantage of vulnerable people. So online safety and security should be your priority. When you're browsing the internet, when you're checking out YouTube channels or what not, security has to be your priority. Because it's a very unsafe medium. It's a very unsafe medium, and it is a medium that goes directly for your head. It influences you, it brainwashes you immediately. So, that's how it is.
Well, it's also true that people also date on the internet. They'll use Tinder or some dating service, and they'll meet their potential wife, husband on the internet. And as well as that, there are some individuals, such as the incels, that feel so lonely that they can only make friends on the internet. Would you say this is ultimately a decadence in society, that the only relationship left is the internet, or that there is still life where people can go be extroverted and meet people at a safe ground or local community?
Yeah. It's you're spot on. It is a sign of decadence, and it is a sign of addictions. No, people are youngsters, especially young boys and young girls. Nowadays, they're really addicted to their, mobile phones and on the net. They're on the net all the time. I would say it's very unhealthy. I would say that young people need to spend time socializing with their university friends, for example, and their family members. They are the ones that you grew up with, you hang out with every day, and you form healthy relationships within your immediate circle. And also to take part in sports. Sports, I believe, is very important for a young person. If you play baseball, or if you are in, soccer or American football, sports keeps, you quite involved. But if you are in a sports team, you're playing professionally. Like when I was young, I used to play field hockey. I was a goalkeeper. I used to play in goal, and I used to play competitively. I've represented international games. I've played for a club and things like that. I was too tired for anything else. I would just focus on my studies and focus on my game, practicing in the pitch, working out in the gym, trying to perfect my skill. And I don't have time for politics or for anything else. That's it. I'm too tired. So I think for youngsters, sports is very important. And sitting all day and all night, on your laptop, on your phone, that's really unhealthy, I believe. And I'm really concerned about, I've got teenagers in my house as well. So, I think this will be in a few years' time, this will become really sort of an epidemic.
So we're getting close to the end of the show, but one in the audience asks, Kilativo asked that she doesn't think that the establishment wanted Donald Trump. What is your thoughts on Donald Trump, and do you think Donald Trump's actions are ethically right or wrong, or do you think he got in office fairly or unfairly?
As a Pakistani, I live in Pakistan in South Asia. Okay, now Donald Trump obviously is a president of the United States, so my view would be different of him than, say, the view of Americans. So some of the things, some of the way that he behaves, I think he's a bit of a unpolished character. Some things they don't, fit in, like his comments and his mannerisms. They are not befitting the stature of the president of the United States. I think he needs to be more refined, and he needs to be more conscious of the stage that he is in right now. That stage is the president. So a president should not be divisive. He should be somebody who unites the whole country. But some of the things that we see on TV, the way he talks to reporters and things like that, we end up saying in Pakistan, hey, what kind of a guy is this? What is he doing? But as far as his policies are concerned, I mean, I can't comment on that, in an expert form of way. If his policies are good for the U.S. government, if they are helping the poor people in the United States, then that's very good. But he needs to understand that he is the president, and he should not behave like a spoiled brat. Sorry to use that term, but sometimes it comes across like that he is behaving in that way.
All right. To wrap up, is there anything else you want to say or give the audience any future projects, what you're doing?
Well, I'd request your audience to subscribe to my channel, and it is a work in progress. Since I am speaking mostly about Islam and comparative religion, if they have any queries, if they are inquisitive about discussing anything, they can get in touch with me, and I'm open, to their queries, and I'm accessible all the time. I think cross-cultural conversations are important, and people from the West, they need to talk to people in the East, because at the end of the day, we are all human beings. We are all human beings, okay? Somebody who feels pain, whether he is in the West or the East, it is, equal. It is equal in that sense that we share a common humanity. So I would request your audience to, engage in a conversation with somebody from the East, like myself, and vice versa. And they are always welcome to do so. And, even if they have criticisms, your criticisms are welcome. On that note, I think I'll suffice for now.
Well, Kashif, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you so much.
All right. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.